For Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We have a great leader. We have a great team. We are all part of that team. Let's make it happen. I want to introduce you with great enthusiasm to the next Prime Minister of Canada, Andrew Scheer.
It's great to see so many Conservatives in the room, and it's great to be here as we work very hard for the next few days, few weeks now, to make sure that Perry Lynn Finley comes back to Ottawa and rejoins the Conservative caucus. On the nomination, I did on the ground here just today. I woke up very early this morning and flew on a direct flight out to Vancouver, landed, got in the car, came out here. We've been knocking some doors this afternoon. We had a great roundtable, and I can tell you, there is a renewed enthusiasm for the Conservative message. People that are realizing that what was advertised is not what they are getting with Justin Trudeau's Liberals. I think it's fair to say there's a little bit of buyer's remorse setting in for a lot of people. I want to talk a little bit tonight about what we need to do about that. First, I can tell you that the entire party is reinvigorated. You know, the media likes, you might have noticed, the media likes to be critical of us sometimes. And, you know, during the entire leadership process, there were some critical and sarcastic articles about the fact that there were too many people running for the Conservative leadership. We had too many candidates. We had 13 candidates at one point going out there and traveling the country, and a lot of people in the media kind of made fun of that a little bit. They said there are too many people who are willing to sacrifice time away from their family and friends as they travel the country to reconnect with Canadians. There are too many people bringing their Conservative message and their idea of what a Conservative vision would be to Canadians all across the country. Too many people signing up new members, bringing new people into the party, pitching innovative ideas, trying to capture the imagination of Canadians. There are too many people doing that. And you know, all along the way, our party grew from around 70,000 members to over 250,000 members strong. And I got to tell you, those are the kinds of problems I am glad we have as a party. Too many people reinvigorating and reconnecting with Canadians. And I want to talk a little bit about how important it is that Conservatives stay united. You know, we had many different people pitching their vision of the party during leadership race, but we all have now come together. I want to thank Mark Warrow and Mark Strahl for being here tonight to show that caucus support for Carrie Lynn. As we go out, we make sure that South Surrey White Rock keeps their strong voice in Ottawa. And we know that that won't happen if a Liberal represents this seat. Because we know that Liberals don't have a voice in Ottawa. Well, I shouldn't say that. Liberal backbenchers don't have a voice in Ottawa. Liberal insiders have a very powerful voice in Ottawa. And that's one of the reasons why we have to send a message to Justin Trudeau that what he's been doing is not acceptable to Canadians. We're going to keep them honest and keep them accountable. Now, we've had a lot to work with recently. You know, this summer, the Liberals started an unprecedented attack on local business owners and job creators in Canada. Shame. And I can tell you, yeah, shame. Shameful is right. Shameful is right about the way that they cast aspersions on those hardworking men and women across the country. You know, I'm very passionate about this issue because I come from a very modest background. My mom was a nurse at a hospital in Ottawa. My dad worked at a newspaper. He's got a post-media pension, so we know all about retirement security in our household. Have lots of conversations about that. I didn't inherit a big amount of money. I had to work my way through university. And every time I found a job to help pay that tuition, it was for a small business. My first job out of high school was waiting tables at a restaurant. And I had that job because that business owner took a risk. That business owner put a lot on the line. They sacrificed a lot. I don't know all the ins and outs of this particular story, but there are so many examples across this country about people cashing in their savings, mortgaging their home, opening up a restaurant or another type of shop. And they gave me opportunity. That business owner gave me a shot, and I was able to pay my tuition and work my way through school. When I moved to Regina, I got a job at an insurance company. And I had no training, still hadn't had my BA at that point, hadn't had accreditation yet, but I was given on-the-job experience. I had that opportunity because that family years ago took those risks, put those efforts in. Stayed up till 1 in the morning on the second pot of coffee to make sure that Canada Revenue Agency had all their forms filled out properly. And got stressed at the end of the month that they were having trouble meeting payroll, because I know so many small business owners across the country will make sure that they are the last to get paid and make sure that their staff get everything that they're entitled to. And what we need to do, we need to show Canadians why balanced budgets are important. We need to finish the sentence. We know that balanced budgets are a good thing. We know that it means that we borrow less money, that we pay less money on interest. But now we see the result of dangerously out of control spending by this Liberal government. Someone once told me that a drowning man will reach out for anything to grab onto, and I think we're seeing that. Yeah. We're seeing them reach out and trying to squeeze nickels and dimes and dollars and $100 from Canadians in every different way that they possibly can. And it speaks to something else about these Liberals, that they hurt the very people that they claim to help. The first people who suffered under Liberal economic policies are the very people they claim to help. When payroll taxes go up, it's always young people, new entrants into the workforce, and new Canadians who lose their job first. When they raise carbon taxes, when they raise income taxes, the very people that are hurt the most are the people that can least afford to pay it. Meanwhile, Liberal insiders get rich off of the government lobbying contracts and always find a way to exempt themselves. Small business owners pay more taxes than the Liberal program, but the shareholders of companies like, oh, I don't know, Morneau Chappelle, they don't pay anything extra. You know, and we have this government that does this all the time. They take with one, they give with one hand, and they take far more with the other. And they try to manage the economy by pulling levers and switches. They ignore private sector solutions. They ignore the fact that there is more to society than just government. They're always looking to expand the size and the scope of government. And in the end, it's all of us who have to pay more. Take, for example, the Bombardier bailout. We're told in Ottawa that we have to pay millions of dollars to Bombardier because, well, you tell me why, but because of the Liberals. That's why. Private sector solution. There's an island airport in Toronto, the Toronto Island Airport, and Porter Airlines wanted to expand that airport, expand the runway, and purchase jets from Bombardier. That was a private sector solution. It wouldn't have cost taxpayers
anything. We don't have to give it any money in a bailout by allowing that kind of private sector development. That's the attitude that conservatives bring to these types of problems. We always look to see, can the private sector, can free people making free decisions, buying and selling freely, can that solve the problem? And if so, let's let that happen, not always enforce and impose more and more government that always leads to higher
what our foreign policy will be. Not standing up for what we believe is right in the world. We remember that when we had a strong principled foreign policy that stood up to terrible and evil regimes, that would say to a leader like Vladimir Putin to very clearly get out of Ukraine. When we took a hard line on countries that funded international terrorism and wasn't afraid to call it by its name. That's all gone now. Now we have a government that's just delegating to the United Nations to decide what our priorities will be. We'll let other people in the UN decide that for us, not Canadians. We should have a strong foreign policy based on Canadian interests that puts Canada's national interests first. We see them ramming through changes. Take, for example, legalizing marijuana. We know that they have an artificial political deadline of July 1st, 2018. They are ignoring the advice of police associations, of medical practitioners, the Canadian Medical Association saying that 18 years old is far too young, ramming this through without any proper consultation, any type of concern from Canadians. And I'll be proud to vote against that bill when it comes up for a vote. We see what they've done with big national, nation-building projects, big picture things that can bring all Canadians together. They canceled the Energy East pipeline. Here was a private sector infrastructure project that would have put thousands of people back to work, wouldn't have cost taxpayers a cent. And they kept moving the goalposts back till finally the company said, we're just not interested anymore. If you're going to put this type of regulations and hurdles on us, we're going to walk away. And that is so devastating. Not just to Western Canadian energy workers, but manufacturers in Central Ontario, construction workers all along the route, but also, most importantly, to get Canada off of foreign oil. We still have a huge section of this country that depends on imports from countries like Algeria and Saudi Arabia and the United States, when we have Canadian energy that's sitting unused, untapped. That's something that Canadians... We have no problem having these vigorous debates. I think it's great that we have intense dialogue sometimes, and we do have that scrutiny on these projects. And it's important that Canadians have their voices heard on all sides of the equation. But we know that Canadian standards are some of the highest, some of the strictest in terms of safety and environmental regulations, and that the energy that is produced here in Canada is ethical and supports jobs and growth here in this country, and not some of the things that is funded by countries around the world. And you know what? I'm happy to have that conversation, happy to have that dialogue with Canadians. But I believe that should be a decision for Canadians. And it is time that we had a government that kept out the foreign money that influences these types of hearings, that funds protesters. Foreign entities coming in and having influence over these decisions. Now, I know there's a lot of issues here at stake in British Columbia. I've had great roundtables today with the Surrey Board of Trade. There are a lot of issues that are affecting individuals here, and I am excited to have Carrie Lynn back at the table, along with Mark and Mr. Oro and Mr. Stroh. You've got such a strong representation in Ottawa with your BC caucus. We're committed to reconnecting with voters in areas that we didn't connect with last time. But I can tell you that there is an appetite for a positive conservative message about how conservative policies improve the lives of all Canadians. We know as conservatives that you don't need to tear people down to build people up. The Liberals wake up every morning dreaming up ways to raise taxes. We wake up every morning thinking of new ways to cut taxes. The Liberals pit one group of Canadians against another. They're always about taking things away. The Liberals approach
unfairness and inequality. You know, kind of like if they saw someone with 2 apples and another person with just 1. And they start thinking of ways of how they can cut one of those apples up or take one of the apples away and give it to the other person and figure that out. Canadian conservatives always look and say, how can we get that guy a second apple? That's the better, more positive way to approach that. Economics is not a zero-sum game. You don't need to create a loser in order to build a winner. Success is contagious. We can all succeed together. Prosperity breeds more prosperity. If you allow people to succeed, if you don't have a government that's constantly being an impediment to growth and opportunity, the quality of life for all Canadians increases drastically. So we have a big challenge ahead of us here in South Surrey, White Rock. We need to make sure we hold on to this seat. It's so good to see so many people in this room. But we need to build on this momentum here tonight and make sure that we knock on more doors than the other guys, that we make more phone calls, we put up more lawn signs, and we connect with more and more voters. We need Carrie Lynn at the table. We need to keep this seat blue. And I can tell you that the road to 2019 starts right here in South Surrey, White Rock. Sure that Justin Trudeau is a one-term Prime Minister. Thank you so much.
Before we do that, I looked at my calendar, and Andrew has an incredible calendar that he probably just got in the mail, and he did see Carrie Lynn and she did get one of these calendars. Well, we only have 3.5 weeks, and it's December 11th. 3.5 weeks. And we need an army of people. We need each of you to get involved every day of the next 3.5 weeks. We need to sort of neighborhood party. This is when the election for 2019 starts tonight. Yeah. And so we can do it, and we need to do it.